Thank you. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Planning Commission. Today is Tuesday, August 20th. We are going to read our statement as part of the call to order. The land that we know as Sequim was once inhabited solely by First People known as the S'Klallam people, represented by the three tribal governments, Lower Elwha S'Klallam, Jamestown S'Klallam, and Port Gamble S'Klallam. We serve as stewards of the land within the city of Sequim with the same care and consideration the S'Klallam tribes has and continues to provide. This acknowledgement is a respect to the S'Klallam people and their history. The Planning Commission serves as an advisory body to the City Council. The purpose of the Planning Commission is to provide guidance and direction for Sequim's future growth through continued review and improvement of Sequim's comprehensive plan, zoning code, shoreline management, environmental protection, and related land use documents. The Planning Commission will have all of the powers and perform each and all of the duties specified by Chapter 35A.63 RCW as amended and set forth or amended by ordinance. Roll call. Emily, will you please take roll call, noting that Commissioner Mahalik is excused absent tonight,
as well as Commissioner LaFever.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
All right, Commissioner Carter.
Present.
Commissioner Kuntz.
Present.
Commissioner Cummings.
Present.
Commissioner Fain.
Present.
And Commissioner Hewitt.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, approval of minutes. So this would be for the minutes from our August 6th meeting. Has everybody had a chance to look over the minutes? And if so, is there any discussion, corrections at all on those minutes? Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve?
Move to approve the minutes from the August 6th meeting.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, minutes stand approved as written. Thank you. Public comment. General public comment will be heard at this time. Each person is limited to 3 minutes. For those wishing to speak on public hearing topics, please hold those comments until that portion of the meeting, which we do not have a public hearing tonight. And if you are looking to provide public comment on either the mobile home park deliberation or the comprehensive plan periodic review, we will not be accepting public comment tonight during this session because we had a public hearing last session or last meeting, and all public comment given at that time is what we are considering. And that public hearing is closed. So if anybody would like to give public comment on anything other than the 2 agenda items, now is the time. Is there anybody that would like to give public comment? Okay. And is your name on the list, ma'am? Okay.
Let me start, and then if you think it's
Okay, sure.
about,
Would you mind stating your name?
I'm Judy Hatch.
Okay, thank
I
you.
live in Juniper Mobile Estates. Several weeks ago, at one of the meetings, I informed the commission about an issue we had in our park, and it had to do with having our street signs all torn down last year. And the problem is mainly when the ambulance, police come in, fire department, they have to drive around trying to find the right number. We have 63, 65 numbers in there, and they don't run parallel to the streets. So we were getting very concerned, and despite the fact that we tried to get the owner to do something, they just wouldn't do anything. So my question was, after I had read the uses and standards, I was really pleased because there's two of them in there that just absolutely address this. And they are,
So are you referring this public comment specifically to the mobile home park overlay that we?
not the overlay.
Okay.
No, this is
Okay.
really with the uses and standards
Okay.
that will augment everything else.
Okay.
Number 6, F and G, which is the street names and the directory. It's absolutely perfect what we need. We need some force so we can get the names put back up. And then the other one was the nighttime lighting, which when we did a survey of our park at night, 36 of the lights didn't work. So you should see what happens when the ambulance has to come in at night, because they don't use their sirens, but they use that big flashlight, and they come in and somebody's going to die. And we know this. We've had a couple really, really near close calls. So we felt that these three regulations would be really perfect. However, we didn't get a final question answered. There was some question as to whether our park would qualify underneath this 10, or what is it, 1862-040, or were we, because we're an old park, and were we going to be put in the pre-existing non-conforming area where these new standards wouldn't even affect us? And this is what I need to know.
So are you referring to the standards within the code that we are sending to the city council?
Yeah, it's 1862.
Yeah, so we've already closed all of the public comment sessions for that. That's the purpose of having the public meeting
Okay.
at the last
Okay.
meeting.
So I should take it up with the city council?
Chair?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
we need to know, if we're not going to be included in this, what else are we going to be excluded from?
Yeah, and you can also reach out to the city directly as well.
I've tried that. Yeah, several calls. They don't want to talk to me anymore. Yeah, but
Okay.
when you look at we're an old,
Chair, may I?
Yes, please.
Ms. Hatch, feel free to Mrs. Hatch. Ms. Hatch?
Yes.
Judy, feel free to contact me. I can explain those questions to you, specifically to the park that you reside in.
okay,
And I will get you a business card.
okay,
But come
It's-
up to the second floor and we can have that conversation.
okay. Can I call you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will do that. It's really important to us. We don't want to be excluded from things, especially the overlay.
Okay.
So,
Well,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anybody else that would like to provide public comment on anything besides one of the items that we have on the agenda tonight? Okay, Emily, is there anybody online that would like to provide public comment?
No one online.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, I will close the public comment session of this meeting, and we will move on to our general business, which is mobile home park deliberation. And this is the time now that we've been working on this for a year and a half. And we've gone through the process. We've held the public hearing. At our last meeting, we've given the opportunity for the public to submit public hearing, and it's given us time specifically to think about and consider all of the input on this. So does the Planning Commission have, ideally, let me back up. Ideally, the motion tonight would be to move to direct the staff to present the attached SMC sections, including the citywide zoning map amendment to City Council's consideration for final adoption of proposed amendments. This is the time for us to talk and see if we're ready to do that. What everybody thinks and feels. We have a couple options to consider. They're not the only options, so definitely feel free to jump in if you want to contribute. We can send it back for more direction if we need, or more information. We could move to send this to the city council, or we can move to send this to the city council and request from the city council a joint session if we feel that we would like to have an open discussion about all of this, so we can explain how we came to the process on things. I do know that Lindsay does have a presentation. So would you like to do that first?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can walk through the brief presentation and the criteria for the findings that the Planning Commission needs to consider.
Okay, thank you.
Emily, will you please pull that up? And if you can go to presentation and just move to the first slide.
Better?
Yes.
Okay.
Next slide, please. Okay. So a little background and thank you, Chair Coons, for doing a summary of this. For the last year and a half, the City Council, almost a year and a half, City Council has had a moratorium on applications and permits for redevelopment of mobile home and manufacturing home parks. Council adopted their second moratorium on February 12th, extending it to August 12th. And in July, the City Council adopted a third moratorium, extending it to, I believe, December or January of next year. This extension from City Council gave us opportunity as a commission to go out into the field check the properties that were under consideration and are being considered for addition of the citywide zoning code amendment. Go ahead, the next slide. And in the same time frame that Planning Commission has been doing work, the state Senate and legislature did pass laws pertaining to requirements of property owners selling and or interested in selling their manufactured mobile home park. If you could go back. Thank you, Emily. Okay, so in June, the Planning Commission did review the 1862 Sequim Municipal Code as written for existing uses and development standards in manufactured mobile home parks. And those standards are required for new development of mobile home parks. The August 6th Planning Commission held our public hearing on the final citywide zoning map amendment, received verbal testimony, and closed the public hearing portion. Tonight, the Planning Commission will deliberate and make verbal recommendations and explain the why, or also known as the basis of the recommendations. And Sequim Municipal Code 1888040C is the required finding necessary to move the zoning text amendments and citywide rezone forward. Staff does find that the proposed land use designation and zoning map amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the comprehensive plan land use map, as the uses are currently allowed within the zones that they are placed in. Moving towards the next slide, the full recommendation from the Planning Commission includes a new Sequim Municipal Code, Chapter 1863, that is the standards for the zone overlay. The existing code in 1862 with some changes, removing definitions from that section and adding them to the definitions section of the code 1808, and then adding a new layer over the citywide zoning map. Staff would like to note that one of the public testimonies at the August 6th meeting was in regards to Sunnyside Mobile Home Park not being shown on the map. As we looked at the PDF further the next day, we did recognize that that was a Scribner's error and have since amended the map to include Sunnyside Mobile Home Park. That was likely a loss in a PDF rendering, but we did get that on there for the Planning Commission recommendation. The next slide, please, Emily. I briefly hit on this at the couple slides back, but the required planning, I have typo in there. That's a fat fingering, sorry. The required planning commission recommendation does require to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and the zoning code for process. Staff does recommend adoption of the draft language of 1863, the revised language of 1862, and other ancillary code amendments such as the definitions moving, and recommends adoption of the citywide zoning map as presented on today. The final recommendations for the process is that once the Planning Commission makes their verbal final recommendation and removes this item from their docket and sends it back to Planning Commission, staff will issue SEPA. In that meantime, as we know that the recommendation and changes to the zoning would not change, and we have a defined scope based upon the Planning Commission recommendation. We do anticipate an adoption of existing documents as these uses are currently allowed outrightly within our housing elements and other aspects of our comprehensive plan. Therefore, no staff did identify and confirm that no comprehensive plan amendments were required to implement the citywide text and map rezones. The City Council will review the Planning Commission recommendation at first touch or first reading. We anticipate these to begin in October due to agenda items on the City Council for September. City Council will hold the final public hearing on the recommendation and consider adoption of the Planning Commission recommendation of final regulations. And that concludes the staff presentation.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, we're not taking any questions at this time.
Sorry.
Is it the same map that was presented last meeting
No,
you're referring to now?
no. The map has been amended to include Sunny's.
That's the only change.
That is the only change.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Lindsay, for that. Okay, so do we have any discussion on this? Or deliberation? Yes, Commissioner Cummings.
So have there been any pending permit applications for any new mobile home parks since we've had this moratorium? Are there any hanging out waiting on us?
We have permits for manufacturing homes coming in on legal lots of record, but we have not had any applications for establishments of new mobile home parks since I believe Lavender Meadows was the last application.
Okay. And talks about incorporating this once it gets all done in the comprehensive plan, or well, what we're talking about Is it already within the plan? Okay.
Current comprehensive plan supports the work program in the direction that the Planning Commission
Okay.
has moved.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Is there anything else? Yes. Commissioner.
If the city were to get a new application for a mobile home park or manufactured home park, would that automatically update this overlay zone map? So would that become part of the city's process to make sure there's a new one approved and the overlay now applies to that?
I will confirm that 1863 outrightly states that a zoning overlay would be required. But say an applicant came in, wanted to establish a binding site plan for a manufactured mobile home park. Sorry, maybe not a binding site plan. Maybe it would be a PRD, planned residential development for a mobile home manufacturing park. We would then require them to also submit fees and process the rezone to establish the overlay on that parcel.
Thank you. Anything else? No? Okay. So just for clarity, so if an owner wants to sell the property, what would that process be?
Well, they would need to follow the standards and requirements of the landlord-tenant law for mobile manufactured home parks under Washington State, and that would not be through the City of Sequim regulatory process. If they sold the park, it would be a title transfer and recording of new ownership, and would make no changes to the standards and zoning map that are.
Okay. So the overlay would stay in place.
Yes, it would be that they would have, if there was interest beyond purchasing and going towards a redevelopment, they would not be allowed to redevelop until a zoning overlay was removed through a public process.
Okay. That's what I was curious about. I mean, that's what I figured, but I just wanted.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. So does the commission feel like we are ready to recommend these amendments for city council's consideration? Is anybody interested in having a joint work session with them to be able to collaborate and explain how we came to some of the requests that we had? I mean, an example of that would be, because this has been so complex over a year and a half, maybe we would want the opportunity to say, well, we went and we toured the properties, or, well, this is why we decided not to go with the housing authority, just something, kind of along those lines.
I think they'll be able to find that out if they really want to know. And my intuition is they already know
Okay.
what we've done.
Okay.
Yeah. And if they have questions, they can remand it back to us with their questions. I don't think any more meetings. We've been at it for a year and a half. I don't think any more meetings are going to be productive.
Okay. So go ahead, Eileen.
When does the current moratorium end? Do you know, what's the end date?
I have to double check, but I believe it's in 2025. I'll pull that
Okay.
up right now.
Should be early, because we did a shorter one, didn't we? Didn't we do like 3 or 4 months?
We went up to 6 months, but we anticipated we'd only need 3, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's too long. I agree with
Okay.
Jeff that we need to get this out of our house and to the city council.
Okay. So playing devil's advocate for a minute, let's say that we send this to the city council and they ask for a work session with the planning commission. Would the commission be open to that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then, Lindsay, will you let them know that that would be an option should they feel that it was necessary?
I will. Thank you. And I have the answer here for you. Effective date. Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped too soon. 6 months, January 18th, 2025
Okay.
is when that's the end of the moratorium, and we will have final adoption with city council prior to that.
Okay, thank you.
And
So,
I would like to note that there will be another public hearing at city council.
okay, thank you. Okay, when we do decide to vote on this, should we get a motion in a second here shortly? Will you take a roll call vote? Okay. All right. So considering all of the information that we have in our packet and that we've reviewed and deliberated and discussed and considered over the last year and a half, is there anybody on this commission that would like to make a motion?
I move that we forward all of the SME, MSC sections, including the citywide zoning map, to the city council for their consideration and for their final adoption, if that's what they decide.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Carter. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Emily, will you take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Hayworth. Commissioner Carter.
Yes.
Commissioner Kuntz.
Yes.
Commissioner Cummings.
Yes.
Commissioner Fain.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Wow. Okay, it's going to the city council. All right, thank you. Okay. Doesn't it feel like we're breaking up? We've been here just so long. Okay. Yes, you are welcome. Okay, let's move on to the 2025 Comprehensive Plan Periodic Update. And Lindsay, I believe you have a presentation for this one as well?
I have a much longer presentation
Okay.
for this one. Thank you. Yeah, ask her.
I'll text him.
If I can ask, I haven't sat at the dais. When Emily is presenting a presentation to you, do you guys have it full screen in front of you? Okay. It's hard for me to read. I want to make sure you can read it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we do.
I have my own backup over here.
Okay.
I'll stick around.
You're really good with the lights, Matthew.
Emily did that. Okay. Oh, hey, Travis. Oh, Will. Hi, Travis. Bye. Okay. Are we ready? You guys, it's okay. The Comprehensive Plan Periodic Update 2025. You guys are going to hear me get pretty passionate about this, and I probably won't leave it alone until we're done with it. It does take quite as big of a lift, if not a larger lift, than what you just went through with the manufactured mobile home parks, except that this will be for the whole city and a balance of policies as well as the mandates from state regulation. I want to go through a PowerPoint slide that you did receive a few materials in your packet today that you had seen in the past, and I will speak briefly to some of those and some improvements that need to be made to them. But in the meantime, I want to get you guys in your mind into the next 10 months of comprehensive plan work and citywide policy. And I will share with you, before I go through the slide deck, that our next meeting, which will be September 17th, will be I don't want to call it an open house. I want to call it a work study, but it will be a open work study for the public that is led with staff and the Planning Commission for the comprehensive plan update. So I share that with you as I prepare to go through this presentation in case your mind grasps or grapples or has some great imaginative ideas on how we demonstrate and share some of the scenarios that the city of Sequim has heard from the initial outreach and some directions that we may want to go for our growth and planning for the next 20 years. Next slide, please, Emily. Emily will be sharing this slide deck with you after the meeting as well. I do want to point out that Growth Management Act, it's not Good Morning America. Washington State Growth Management Act was adopted by the state legislature in 1990 and enacted in 1994. It requires the reduction of sprawl and urban facilities within rural areas and mandates that cities and municipalities provide the infrastructure necessary for the required growth. This is a hyperlinked slide deck as well. So when we send it to you, this first RCW 3670A that's highlighted in green, that is, now I messed up my microphone, sorry. That is an active link to the Washington State Department of Commerce required page for going down the rabbit hole on the Washington State Growth Management Act. You can learn all about the information shows, education that they've done, and go to specific topics. If you're interested just in land use or climate or housing requirements for cities and different counties, this would be the website that you would really want to be able to dive into. I really need to keep my feet off that. So high level, the Growth Management Act requires every city to update their 20-year planning horizon, and that is due to major periodic updates of the comprehensive plan. We must have the ability to serve the assumed growth that we will acquire, including service, meaning wastewater, water, potable water, stormwater, as well as housing, parks and recreation, and addressing the amenities necessary for a strong and healthy community based upon the legislature's definition. It does require that the city identify and work within the community, regional, and state priorities. We are not on our own here in Sequim. As you know, we are part of Clallam County. We have other neighboring jurisdictions that feed into our economies of scale as well as our housing. And so making sure that there is coordinated and consistency at a regional level. In addition, one of the required updates to this major periodic update under GMA is tribal coordination. So ensuring that we are coordinated and working closely and ensuring that we have the tribe's input on large projects as well. The Growth Management Act is the foundation for all of the regulation and investment in growth in Washington State. It oversees the capital infrastructure plans that my peers in Public Works present. It oversees the transportation plans that my peers in Public Works manage. It oversees the budgetary funding of the capital infrastructure for a large amount of the city. So the importance of doing the comprehensive plan right does have quite a, I wouldn't even call it a trickle down. It has quite the heavy flow down to the rest of the regular duties and needs that the city goes through on an annual basis to ensure that it is growing consistently and cohesively with the visions and policies. What is required under the Growth Management Act? Next slide, please, Emily. there are more elements than what is listed here, but these are the large ones that we require an element to the land use element, which is designating where our infrastructure, also where our infrastructure will be invested. But we can have as low as single family residential and as high density residential. We can have a mix of commercial components, such as a neighborhood commercial land use designation, up to large box, high intensity designations like we have on the southwest side of Washington. Yes, never eat shredded wheat. In addition, not only do we go through and consider land use, the transportation plan has to be coordinated and consistent. Growth must pay for growth in Washington state. That is because we cannot put it on the backs of the previous kind of residents that are there to cover the cost of service for new growth. So when projects come in that are a new project or an expansion, they will have to pay for the growth of the demand that project does draw. In addition to transportation policies, housing is a required policy, and that housing element probably has the most mandated updates necessary. Housing has been a large focus of the state legislature over the last few years, and they went in and did some major updates to the housing requirements of the comprehensive plan prior to this requirement of cities to update. In addition, capital facilities and utilities. You may wonder, why are there two different sections? Well, capital facilities are the facilities that the city taxpayers provide. That's the water, sewer, wastewater, roads, sidewalks, transportation, infrastructure. Utilities are what our service providers provide, such as telecommunications, fire in our case, also transit, and let's see here, broadband and other internet service providers would fall under the utilities section. Parks and recreation element, ensuring that we have levels of service for our parks and recreation to grow with growth occurring within our housing and land use element. The city does have an impact fee program for our parks, so new growth does pay their fair share into the parks program. And then through property taxes, well, actually, no, because we don't have a special purpose district. Economic development is an element that is needed to be considered and closely ties to the transportation, housing, and land use elements. As economy of scale for growth in either living wage jobs, high intensity manufacturing, industrial, however the direction of the economic development goes for that element will feed into, okay, do we have enough land use designations for these goals and policies? Do we have enough large lots for more big box if that's the direction the community wants to go? And then a new element is climate resiliency. This is mandated through the state and can either be peppered through or its own element. Again, has to be consistent with all of the other elements that are listed above it. Next slide, please. I believe you've seen this slide before. SCJ Alliance is our hired consultant that will work on 10 phases of our project scope. They will be working on the project management, understanding the actual update. We will be doing SEPA, which will be a larger environmental impact statement process, or kind of an EIS addendum to our prior EISs that have been done. Engagement is required under GMA throughout the whole process, but we really kick it off at the beginning to get people excited, informed of the website, be aware that then get on the mailing list so that they can be aware of when the public hearings and the specific, I'll call it weeds of the policies that are being considered, really get into conversation. And then again, the transportation element, we are required to also have a housing action plan, a climate action plan, and those can be within the elements of the comprehensive plan. The economic development, and then we are looking at a phase of the unified code development. State Growth Management Act requires that our critical areas ordinance be updated within 12 months of the updates to our comprehensive plan. And if we are to go change land use designations in our comprehensive future land use map, there will also be zoning code standards and updates that the Planning Commission will be processing directly after the comp plan. Guys, ask me questions at any time. I don't need to go through the whole presentation.
You brought up that under this, there's a requirement that impact fees are assessed to make sure that growth covers its costs.
Yeah.
One of the things I hear outside is, how do we come up with our impact fees?
Yeah.
Is that part of this process? And do we kind of benchmark ourselves against Port Angeles, Port Townsend, or the county for various fees?
So actually, our fees are based upon the wish list of projects that are in the 6-year and 20-year capital improvement programs for parks and transportation. So if there's a very large wish list of growth needs, such as, expanding a roadway or building a whole new road because of growth, then the cost of that, say, how can I simplify it? So say there's 20 projects in the capital project list and they all cost $1 million each. So it's $20 million. And we assume that is needed for growth of, let's say 200,000 new homes. So if it's 20 million and 200, now I got to do quick math. Who's good at the numbers here, Jeff? 20 million divided by 20,000 would be $1,000 each for
Correct.
each unit. Thank you. I
Very
knew
good.
I picked easy numbers
Just
for an
add the
easy
zeros, 3
demonstration.
zeros.
And so it is based upon the more that the citizens wish for more projects that growth will pay for. Now, impact fees cannot cover gaps. If a road was built without a sidewalk back in the late 80s, there's some gaps that may not be recoverable, and then the city would go for grants and other funding sources to fill in some of the missing infrastructure gaps. So growth can only pay for the new impact that growth is creating.
So if our fees are higher, it's because our population is asking for more than the other areas that might be. Is that
Yeah.
kind of just the
Yeah.
general? I just want a
Typically,
general
there's more
answer
there's more
for Joe on the
projects.
street
Yeah.
to say, well, it's because the community wants lots of parks and lots of airports or whatever we want. That comes out of this plan.
Yeah.
Do we have any authority to bring that number down, or is that just we're going to go based on what the community says?
I do not believe the Planning Commission has authority on impact fees. That is a financial decision that I believe is left with City Council. However, the Planning Commission has the ability to make policy recommendations on impact fees in the elements of the comprehensive plan. You're welcome. Good questions. And I think Alex looked like he may have had one while I was doing. So I do want, feel free to, this is a play a game of toss here.
My concern was just similar, that existing citizens not having to shoulder the expenses of growth. It was interesting to see how growth at extremes of a road network or county roads that become trunk roads and everything, they would be assessed for the improvements needed to their part of the road.
Not the delay, but yes, like if a project was, if a traffic impact analysis came in and said, because of your 200 new homes, we need to make improvements to this light over here because it's not going to work enough for that many new cars at 5 o'clock at night, then we would say, in addition to your impact fees, we would either say you could either build the light and do the improvements or pay the impact fees that would cover the cost of your impact. So one project with 200 units, and then there's another one that comes 2 years later and another one that comes 2 years later. Maybe we then get enough fees at that point in time to actually make the capital improvement for the infrastructure.
Okay. I see.
Okay, moving forward, next slide.
Who did the checklist, Lindsay?
Yeah, well, next slide, checklist. Great segue, Jeff. This checklist was completed by a predecessor that was not very familiar with Washington State GMA at the time. He had came from the state of Florida and was learning, I believe, and with Steve. I don't remember his last name. But I spent some time last night after work going through this, and there are some areas that do need to be updated. There's some aspects that the city does meet already that I think there's just, he potentially wasn't aware of where to go to find those. So the checklist will actually is the first aspect that's required from the Washington State Department of Commerce. So it may have been completed rapidly, but it does need to go in, and there you will see that staff will be making updates and adding corrective language to it as we continue forward with the code amendments. And if you have a specific question on a specific page, go ahead and ask.
Well, it's obvious that parts of it are lacking or inaccurate, but it's a great reference because I've never seen where RCWs are cited in relation to the comprehensive plan in such detail.
Yes.
So it's really very helpful from my point of view. I think he did a good job, even though he was from Florida, which is okay.
Yeah, it's pretty down there.
Yeah.
I think the beauty of the checklist and the reason that I did provide it was because of the commerce tools that are within it and the understanding that this isn't a high-level conversation we'll be having over the next 9 months, but we will be getting into the weeds of the pros and cons of policy direction.
Excellent.
Yeah. Next slide. The policy analysis tool was provided. There have not been updates to this, so I did not provide it as your exhibit to tonight's meeting, but you did receive it when Bill Grimes and Aaron Mercar with SCJ Alliance came in, I believe it was March 5th at your meeting there. And this will be a continuing tool that we utilize as well and share with the Planning Commission as we fill the items out and or validate and or discuss the recommendations or suggestions necessary for compliance. Schedule. So the contracted schedule with our consultants has us finishing the comp plan June 30th. I do want to note that the state legislature did adopt a 6-month extension for Clallam County, that we will not be late if City Council didn't adopt. City Council has until December 31st of 2025 to adopt it. So if Planning Commission needs until June, we can utilize some time.
Said that was for the entire county?
Correct.
So everybody, every institution, every agency within the county gets that?
Cities, towns, and counties are required to plan under GMA, not necessarily public entities or special purpose.
Were we the only county that got that, or is this kind of a bigger issue?
No, we are actually the bigger issue along the higher intensity urban I-5 corridor in the state is that they are all due 2 months ago.
Oh.
So the faster growing counties have an earlier deadline for their comp plan updates by almost 1.5 years. And they have some more stringent requirements too. the ending of the unified code development is to be determined, but hopefully by the end of 2025, we will have our code amendments completed. The public participation plan has been completed and developed. We are currently we've passed the understanding and visioning work and are looking at the options and priorities this month and into September. We will establish our commitment to the environmental impact statement and the alternatives that the city wants to consider for our growth by winter, and then begin our environmental impact statement review in winter of this year and early next year. We anticipate public hearings to occur at Planning Commission in spring of 2025, with code amendments going forward from spring to winter. And next slide, as we are, writing the plan follows a process. We needed to establish a baseline understanding, including aspirations and priorities, defining the vision and considering options, applying our community values to choose which fits best, and then create an implementation strategy for bite-sized actions. While it is a 20-year planning document, there may be some policies that we propose that begin consideration in year 5, in year 6, in year 7. By 2034, consider doing this with the city of Sequim. So think about that, because not everything can be implemented immediately as well. But as you're considering things through this whole process, remember 20 years, let's think about time frame, how it all coordinates and collaborates together.
Lindsay, are we planning on going beyond the required elements of the comp plan into some of the optional ones, or what's the thought there?
Yeah, the city has some optional elements already in its current comprehensive plan. And so that is an option to consider in determining what is good planning that is already there. We don't want to I can find a bad analogy, throw the baby out with the bathwater. But we do want to go through and be cognizant and aware of where do we preserve, where do we change, and where do we say the same, because we haven't maybe hit that target yet or that policy.
The optional elements in there are not very well explored, I would say, in the current comp plan. They're
Correct.
very general in nature.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see some of them in there, but I don't know what you guys have contracted to do with our.
But we have
with our
staff
provider.
that can go beyond the contracted work too. So I would love to hear what you're considering or thinking.
And we've got a year and a half to do it, don't we?
But tell me now.
Well, I was always aghast at the lack of energy related element and the environmental related element. We have such a unique environment, and the comprehensive plan, I'd say 95% of the words are all human centered, and there's other centering around other than we.
Yeah.
So I would like to see those explored a little bit more or developed a little bit more. I mean, we have the last bastion of Gary Oaks on the Olympic Peninsula, and I know there's a little development going by Kerry Blake Park, but there's still some around, that are in neighborhoods, for example.
I've got one in front of my house, actually on my property.
Very nice.
I love it.
Love it.
I will note that the climate element that is required for our work is specific to greenhouse gas reductions and some of the mandates under state law and their Move Ahead Washington funding package they passed a few years back. So you will see a lot of energy related, solar, sustainable, environmental conversations, not just in regards to hazard mitigation, but in proactive planning, supporting alternative energy types, and having that discussion about how the city of Sequim can meet the requirements, but maybe even be a leader in some approaches to that.
Okay.
And so we will present a draft element, but I think that the existing elements, and maybe did I assume what you meant by energy related?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on that, but the one that didn't fly with the last director was in the building related. Why would we not advise or require a building standard that had a solar ready electrical panel? They're not that much more.
Yeah.
And it just makes it that much easier for everybody to convert should they choose to do it. But the builders were like, oh, we don't have a margin, and so it's like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
It'd be a simple thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's stuff like that. And there's many other instances, but I know you got a long thing. So,
and we can also consider incentives through our development standards when we do our unified code development to say, hey, maybe you get an extra unit in your apartment complex or two if you go solar, or if you add more low impact, drought tolerant vegetation.
landscaping. Yeah.
There's all kinds of
absolutely.
alternatives and levers and pulleys that could be considered to incentivize, if not mandate.
I like you more and more. Just keep talking.
Okay. So engagement, we have our public participation plan. I've been yelling about the website for months now. We did orientation interviews. We held our vision workshops in June. The staff with the department have done community events and farmers market. We've got some storefront studio work, and then we will be doing our planned draft EIS rollout. We will also be having an implementation workshop that will be hosted and led by the Planning Commission in spring of next year, and then likely joint work study meetings with the Planning Commission and City Council prior to and or after public hearings. SquimImagine.org is our website. I'll just take the opportunity right now. You can find information, surveys, detailed data available specific to the city of Sequim on this website. You can also sign up to get more information about the project and be on our project mailing list. Thank you, Emily. You're reading my mind. Storefront Studio, we were there in June. I think most of you were able to stop in briefly. It was a fun and imaginative engagement process, identifying some of the aspects and trying to get some guidance on the direction that the residents of the city of Sequim want to go for the next 20 years. There were 3 different alternatives that came out of it. Including some different scenarios. And we'll go a little further into engagement. Again, our community events and outreach that we've done through the farmers market and other aspects. We also have information and flyers up on the second floor counter, and staff is available to answer any questions if any members of the community want to come up and ask about this. Next slide, please. Oh, no, studio results. Okay, so a little bit of the feedback that we got from the studio. We identified and looked at a vision policy gap. We've held a transportation open house. We did our scenarios workshop. We held a mini poll, a penny poll, and identified policy targeting. So up on the top with your green, you can see some of our policy targeting approaches, where most of the feedback came in with the residents stating that downtown Sequim still needs to be a priority for the city. In the second column, or I should say row, most of the residents came in stating that more should be done to make Sequim a place to raise a family. The highest scoring policy targeting states that the city should do what it can to make housing more affordable. Another high scoring is that the policy targeting identifies that we should prioritize growth within our city limits, limiting sprawl in the urban core or in the rural and county. And then we also, final policy targeting guidance that we received from this is that we should focus on attracting and keeping well-paying permanent jobs within the city of Sequim. So I think that's a pretty heavy lift. All of those are some gaps that we have and I'll recognize. You'll notice down below on the bar graph, that would be our penny poll. And the highest scoring that we received in our penny poll was the preservation of rural and open space. What that means is that the city grows and the county preserves, and we work on the way that the professional planner reads that is that we do not have rural or open space designations within city limits. The GMA limits cities from having those. Therefore, the county has those, and we have the amenities and services needed for the housing and residential needs. I saw a question, Larry.
So because that is the highest score that the people wanted, but what we all are acknowledging is we can't provide that in the city structure. Do we work with the county then to preserve the rural and open spaces? Is that something that we can possibly do? Or is this something that we just acknowledge and move forward with the things that we can do?
The county is currently working in discussions on what they're calling our housing allocations. And I'm working with our peers within the county, the other jurisdictions and staff at the county to determine those allocations that are appropriate. Keep in mind what we said on the first slide was that it had to be serviceable. So we have to have the water capacity, the sewer capacity, and hopefully not maximize it all in 20 years. The state determines your growth requirements that you have to plan for based upon your historical growth trends. However, the state is also guiding that if there are trends where your county has grown faster, they want to change that so that the growth is occurring within the cities within the county. So I would counter argue that by upzoning or outrightly allowing townhomes, we are preserving rural and open space outside of our jurisdiction because we are working to provide the housing within the jurisdiction so that we can then recreate and enjoy in the county the rural and open space lands. But yes, that will be something that is a good point to remember that the tools, it's not preserving rural and open space within city limits. It's doing our share so that we can preserve and help implement the Growth Management Act through its intents. The studio results, we have priority values, policy priorities, and scenarios. At a high level, we called them resilience, prosperity, and families. These three scenarios are available on our website. You can see how some of I think many of you were there that night too. So you were able to experience the work that was done at those groups. The website can go in a little further and go ahead and also speak more to some of the visioning of the SNPs and policy gaps that were identified. So now I'm going to get into some of the preliminary alternatives that the city is considering for our environmental impact analysis that we must do citywide for the comprehensive plan. Status quo, there's always the do nothing. It is there's potential risks of it's a continuation of the existing land use pattern that was adopted in the 2015 comprehensive plan, which didn't make a whole lot of changes from the ones that was in the 2005 or the 95 that I could tell. It keeps the land use map and the zoning map almost identical. It doesn't allow a whole lot of adjustments and flexibilities through the comprehensive plan land use future map for zoning adjustments, converting from commercial to residential, or converting from mixed use to high intensity residential. The next alternative would be the downtown emphasis. And the downtown emphasis map depicts here an approach to zoning in which residential and employment growth is largely focused into downtown Sequim. The city center is characterized by taller building heights and a mix of residential and commercial uses. The commercial character elsewhere on Washington Street remains unchanged, and the rest of the city remains low density. The highlights include a separation and distinction of our downtown, consolidation. I'm not the only one that fat fingers. I see a typo here. Consolidation of community, mixed use, and regional commercial into a baseline commercial designation. It expands the highway commercial and renames it to heavy, and it retains the existing resort designation. The third and final alternative being considered is a Washington corridor. And as you can see through this map, you kind of have some higher intensity concentric centers along Washington that create. This would propose an approach to zoning in which the residential and employment growth is spread across Washington Street. Potential of parcels along this corridor unlocked to enable the growth of additional nodes outside of downtown, with infill housing between, connected by our regional transit service we have on Washington. This allows for additional commercial and residential nodes characterized by a mix of uses. It's a linear corridor with various development intensities that are served by transit. It does create an expansion of highway commercial designation and renames it to heavy commercial, and it retains the creation of the resort designation down by the bay. This one does not force increases in intensity in downtown. It allows it to create kind of neighborhood centers along Washington Street that then become kind of what we have called maybe sub areas, or some concentric type of planning that you have higher intensity uses every 5 or 6 blocks instead of a long linear heavy intensity use road. It does bring residential into the mostly commercial areas within the city as well. These are the 3 alternatives that would be the bookends to the environmental impact statement. Now, the commission can pick and choose aspects of the bookends within it and create the book pages, if that makes sense. Meaning you don't have to pick just one the Washington corridor, or just the do nothing, or just the downtown. You can say, from the do nothing aspect or proposal, I like this. From the downtown, I like this, and I really like this on the Washington, so let's merge it all together. Because the bookends have been placed, we would be able to be within our environmental analysis through the comprehensive plan policies. I hope you guys followed me on that. I'm here for questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, do nothing doesn't sound.
Like an option?
Can we change the name of it? It has a negative
okay.
connotation. Maybe
I should have
it's
called status quo. We can say status quo. I'll keep that
something.
one.
Do nothing just sounds like we didn't do anything. But I also I appreciate what that means, but it sounds like that's our history. Is that correct? Going back before
I
any
would
of
say
us were here.
there's been some great planning work that's been done in Sequim, but the investment didn't come during the timeframes that it was there, and there's been a lot of shifts and changes, and so it has similarly. There hasn't been a lot of re-guidance to how we want to see the city developed.
One of the things when some of us attended the meetings, there was a discussion about the schools.
Mhm.
And now we're not responsible for the schools. The districts have their own land, their own plans. But some of the discussion was that those legacy locations are not near housing. And so families are struggling to get kids in and out, and it's not convenient. Would we be working at all with the school districts to see what they're doing as far as, are they going to build a school somewhere out on the other end? And will our plan then be, let's make sure we have housing around the school and not put some kind of industrial waste treatment plant?
So all three of the alternatives, I should say, do identify the school district and bringing back a public institution land use designation. I don't know if you guys were on the counts commission when that got removed, but it is professionally recommended to have a public institution land use designation for PUD property, for school district property, for fire departments, because they have unique needs that do not necessarily always need to go through, say, a conditional use permit to, provide their services and or preserve their investments to be able to provide services in the future. All of this, the Washington corridor scenario does identify the most housing growth potential around the existing district location within the city limits. There is not high intensity residential around the kind of, area that the school district has, likely because of the time when it needed to purchase it and the periphery outside of where it was. Yeah. But, the school district will be involved and invited as we talk about specific elements. And if the planning commission were to direct staff to say, I'd like you to call the school district and talk to them about this, we do that based upon direction too.
I think I remember on the transportation master plan that the Prairie Street kind of Washington bypass development is still in play.
Correct.
And so that would be, I guess I'm not sure what my question is on that. If we're trying to route or ease traffic on Washington and through Prairie, there would usually, and there's already some commercial stuff going on there, or at least small business stuff going on there.
Mm-hmm. We currently have a zoning designation that allows more commercial, maybe not on Prairie, but I know along Bell, and you can see some of that that's historically been there between like 7th and 4th or
Right.
so. I would recommend that my consultants overlay the street typology network and our future street typology network with our land use map, because if we have a road that is designated to be a major arterial in 20 years, we should consider the zoning intensity along that to be appropriate.
God, that was just what I was thinking. No, I'm kidding.
That's the question you meant
You're
to
way
ask.
ahead of me. Okay, that's great. I just didn't know if it was factored in, because that's a critical thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was just recently showing me on Google Maps some planning there, as well as up by the how they connect that south side of Washington.
And a tangential question to that, where that's going to outlet on the east side, is that, I know the big chunk is private property over there, but is all of that open space private property, or is any of it Sequim property?
I think it's private, but the plan is to purchase or to.
You mean purchase right-of-ways?
Likely for growth. So when we have new needs for right-of-way, that is something that traffic impact fees can be utilized for, is to purchase land for the roadway network.
Okay. I guess I'm just thinking that open space stuff. I know there was a proposal for a recreational vehicle thing on that big piece of property there, which didn't fly for some reason. I forget it.
No, you can call.
My thought isn't coherent yet.
You're welcome to call me anytime.
Okay.
Let's see here. So last slide, next steps. We have our alternatives workshop. That's going to be on your, okay, I don't know if, I believe you guys all got the email, but I have made the call that we will be canceling our September 3rd meeting as we have the day after a holiday, and we have not taken a summer break this year. So we will, our next meeting will be September 17th. We will be doing an active engagement alternatives workshop with the Planning Commission and the broad community. So we will be sending out invites, informing the broader community through the utility newsletter, as well as other methods and means to invite them to the workshop that we have. One of the things that SCJ Alliance has requested that I get some ideas and guidance from you tonight is, how would you like to host that? As the Planning Commission, we can set up stations that you assign. We have some staff that could handle stations too, but I do think there's value in being a participatory active participant in the process through the education and listening to the community that does show up. So do you guys, based upon those that were able to make the visioning workshop, have any preference on what you do, how you do it, and or the tools that you're provided with to be able to do it for the next meeting on September 17th?
I guess, that seems like a long time ago when we were there, but what was nice that they had stations, but that we also worked in time to talk about the results from that work. Because sometimes you go to stations and hear it 6 months later about what the majority voted for or recommended. So I think that would be nice, and the participants would feel appreciated that their work was considered and included. So I like the stations idea for a beginning and then a summary at the end.
Okay. And would you maybe small group work after station review? Like do review of stations, then sit down at a table, have a, assuming how many people show up, but
Right.
hopefully everyone could to have a group of 4 or 5 people and just ask some guided questions on what are the pros and cons of this? What do you think,
Is that essentially what we did?
Similarly, but this one will be on the alternatives. Those 3, the status quo, the Washington corridor, or the downtown centric. And so kind of the pros and cons to those land use scenarios and maybe the things that were missing or didn't get considered into it.
I thought the way they did it was very effective.
Okay.
At least at my tables, and it felt like the conversations were good. I would appreciate if we were able to pull in a different, maybe wider demographic. And I know we can't force people to show up, but I just remember there was one person who had skin in the game about families, right? And the rest of us look like this, right? And family was now not, we want families to be here, but we don't know what the families of today need. We know what our families needed. And so if there's a way to do that somehow, to target some participants, I think that would be very effective especially on these 3.
Okay.
These 3 different things.
I think I've got an idea, and I can reach out to the Boys and Girls Club
Or the
as well
schools.
as the school district. The city does have a relationship with the school district too. Now we may not be getting family planning ideas from the students, but I think the students will be able to give us what would be nice for them to have to choose to, maybe they want to stay and raise a family here later down the road.
You could also reach out to the Chamber of Commerce. I know that Beth would be happy to get that out in the newsletter and send an email if you need
Yeah,
to the membership.
Small business people,
yeah.
Mhm.
you know, they struggle a lot and they know downtown pretty darn well and what works and what doesn't. And I think there's 4 businesses for sale in Washington right now. So
Yeah. Okay.
I couldn't make that last event, but was the city council involved in any way?
I recall a couple council members showing up. Yeah. Wasn't mandatory, but they were there and aware. I think I saw at least 1 or 2 council members there every day. Yeah.
Okay.
If not all of them coming through at one point in time.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Well, that's
sounds
really
like-
good guidance.
Sounds like stations.
We'll do stations, then we'll do small group to really dive in and kind of ask some of them more questions, and then we'll do a report back.
Okay. So that's going to be our 17th meeting.
That will be the 17th meeting.
Okay. So is our time frame for the meeting going to be the same, or do we need a little bit
I would
more time?
anticipate it for your needs to plan maybe 5:30 to 7:30
Okay.
because of the amount of work and what we hope to have good attendance.
Okay.
That concludes the conversation and the guidance I needed tonight. I'm just going to keep saying this for the record, for you, and for anyone listening. Feel free to call and reach out. This is a big project. There is a lot of information in it. It's not easy to absorb and digest the first moment and or the fourth moment that you get briefed on it. Some, glimmers and new aspects and information pop up each time, even for myself. So no question's a bad question.
Okay. I'll probably reach out before that meeting.
Yeah.
Just because I'd like to wrap my head around a little bit of the status quo and, just so I feel comfortable talking about it.
Yeah. And I can ask the consultant to give a little more like back pocket information for you commissioners to have. It would be included in the agenda. So the rest of the app, anybody would see it, but make sure that you guys are well prepared to. It's a learning process, so it's not a fixed stance. We're trying to figure this out ourselves. So
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that presentation.
you're welcome.
Does anybody have any questions for Lindsay? Okay. Looking forward to diving into this. Okay. So if nothing else under general business, we have no new business. So it's time for the director's report. So we'll put you
Yeah.
on the spot again.
No worries. We will be holding a public hearing for plat extensions on September 9th at City Council. And we are queued up for September 23rd for first touch on the code amendments that you guys held your planning commission public hearing on the 6th for the 2 points of access on subdivisions of lots more than 30 units. Let's see here. Big news. Yeah. I shared with you at the last meeting that Travis Simmons has been promoted to senior planner. We have closed the requisition for our assistant and associate planner position and plan to schedule and perform interviews over the next few weeks and hope to have that staff member fully staffed and on board by the end of September. That will be a fully staffed department at that point. Projects are coming in, applications are going out. There's been just a lot of stabilizing. We are currently working on some going to electronic plan review with our Tyler permitting system. And so applicants will be able to apply online at home without requiring an email from Emily, to be able to apply for their projects and pay their fees through our new online permitting system. It is our goal to have that live in fall of this year. And as we get closer to that date, I will share more with the commission. Staff's looking at kicking back up the developer forum meetings that were held on a quarterly basis. I have been asked to by participants and people that attended those. They were great for learning information. We've done some process improvements and are updating our forms, applications, and checklists as we're preparing for going to electronic plan review. So we'd like to share some of that new information with our developers, inform them of the changes so that when they are ready to utilize them, it's not a surprise and a new learning curve to be able to get the process or application in. That concludes the director's report at this point.
Okay.
I have
Jeff?
one comment.
Yeah.
I mentioned this to a couple of predecessors, but so I'll mention it just to keep in the back of your mind. But it's nice to have a developers conference and keep them up to date. There is a whole nother segment of the population that are not developers, and they're also interested maybe in the opposite of development and maybe a sister outreach to folks who want to know why we're developing and how we're developing somehow, and be up to date about what you're telling the developers. And here's what you need to know about development in Sequim, just so everybody's involved, not just one stakeholder in the process.
Yeah, I think there's value to that a lot. And hopefully tonight's presentation on the comp plan may have explained a few things under state law mandates of the growth occurs in the municipalities and preservation occurs in the county. But I do think that there are some of our most emotional applicants are the ones that don't plan on building more than one house, and they have a hard time getting through the process and don't understand the requirements of why do we need that? Why do you need that? And explaining just like the checklist with all the RCWs, kind of giving this is why we require a site plan. This is why we require a traffic analysis if it's more than one unit, some of those things. So that is good. And we will be working on some fact sheets for the department too. So I think that can coordinate with my process improvement ideas on fact sheets for the broader public, not just for the development community. Thank you.
Eileen.
Who does the oversight for the Growth Management Act? What department in the state is it?
Oh, yeah. There is the Washington State Department of Commerce is the primary department, but there is a Growth Management Hearings Board. So if the cities or counties get appealed for either not meeting state mandates or going beyond state mandates, it goes through, it's almost like a state Supreme Court, but for growth and GMA compliance.
Okay, great, thanks.
Did you have something, Matt?
Do you want to add something,
Adjourn. So occasionally I just kind of summarize. Number one is I want to thank Lindsay as she's only a couple months here and has done, besides moving and picking up a lot of things that were half done. I just want to publicly thank you for the subject matter expert you are. And I, again, always want to thank you for your service. You're right, Jeff. We recently surveyed our residents, and we asked them all kinds, like you probably filled out that same survey. It was like 6 pages of questions. And we asked them, how did we rank in various things? And then also how important was it, whatever we were asking about, to them. And managing growth and development we were ranked low, and it was super important to them. So it's the right quadrant to go after. These are regular residents outside of developers that were really interested. And so we're not sure if we just know they scored us low on managing growth and development, and it's important. So we need to talk to them about, we're not doing enough of it, or we're doing too much of it. We're not exactly sure. So we're targeting that. I just made my 5 operational goals for the city recently, and it made one of the 5 because we asked our residents what's important to them, and this was high. So I think you're right, and you all play right into that. We also have a senior management retreat coming up, and trying to, I'm in charge of that, that agenda, and they don't know what it is yet, but I do, and it's going to be focusing on how to put our residents, how to put them central to everything we're doing, making a resident centric city, and including all this type of information. How do we get more information to them, whether through fact sheets or all kinds of other ways? We need to engage the regular residents in all things that the city is doing. So thank you for bringing that up, and it is important, and we will be addressing that soon.
Yeah, I had 3 people approach me, families, young families, new children, and what's with all the growth? And I think it's just a matter of unawareness, and not understanding there's a growth management plan and all of that stuff. So that's great.
And we're very interested in that subpopulation because, of course, we have a lot of demographics on the other end of the spectrum, right? The senior population and whatnot. So we're really interested in trying to really develop that side of things with a lot more family events and whatnot. So, and really, Lindsay's also working hard on a schematic. So not just developers, but anybody that might be just doing a shed or any part of a building design or whatever. The process of how to do that. So many people come in and are it's not a simplified process. So a very simple schematic of what the processes are, how long it takes, fees along the way. So in kind of a informatic schematic, people we're trying to make all this stuff a lot simpler. And my last point is, again, to you, Jeff, I think I've been here 2.5 years, and I think you're the only one that keeps or has consistently brought up, well, it's in our comp plan, and I think, and most people, that was pretty shelved, and you're about the only one that ever referred to it. But I believe you read it and knew it and wondered why we weren't following it. And you were right. And it was done 10 years ago and pretty much put on a shelf, and it was very vague. And so what I'm experiencing since I've been here is going to be a much different comp plan, very detailed. It will not be on the shelf. It will be followed and adhered to and referred to a lot. I've heard the county commissioners yesterday in their county meeting talking about, since all of the municipalities and the counties were all going through this comp plan, we really need, once everybody's done, we need to be looking at each other's and looking at ways to complement. So the elected officials, everybody's realizing these are important, and we need to keep them front and center to all discussions relative to resource allocation, priority setting, operations, et cetera. So I think, I know you've been a kind of a lone voice in the wilderness crying out for, comp plan, but I think in 3 years, you'll see that it's a very different place on the peninsula. So
Fairness, this is not the only municipality. I mean, there's a giant one right close around us that has done the same thing.
Oh,
so
well,
hopefully it's changing.
I really feel like it is. There's a lot more awareness and an understanding of the importance of that. A lot more effort going into making sure it's relevant and it's accurate and it's got everybody's input and future engagement tied to it. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, I just have one quick question for you. So The land down by John Wayne Marina where they were looking at possibly doing a resort community. Have they reached out at all, or is that anything we can share?
The applicants did hold a public, or I should say, no, the city did receive a pre-application meeting and held a pre-application meeting on the project. We have not received anything more in regards to a land use application or any information on future development.
Okay, and so that is within the Sequim city limits,
Correct.
correct? And just for clarity, because I can see where this could really be a passionate.
This
Item.
property's been designated that, I believe,
That's-
for 17 years. And
Okay,
I believe the property has been on the market as a resort for about 20.
okay. And that's what I had. That's what I had figured.
Yeah.
So it's not because of the designation. You know, you hear a lot and see a lot. You know, of like, well, we should be building homes, but that can't really happen on that property because of how it's zoned, correct?
How it's currently
I mean, it
designated.
would have to be rezoned.
And there is a requirement to plan for economy too.
Okay,
And it's not just the housing or not just, you have to have the jobs and the employment and the economy of scale with the housing typologies under growth management.
okay,
So that you're not commuting to work at somewhere else and driving 40 minutes each day on a freeway to get back to your house.
right, okay,
Now, not specific to that particular land use designation, but that property is not being considered to be undesignated
okay,
as a resort through those scenarios, as you noticed,
Okay.
may have noticed on the map.
yes, okay, yeah. I just, I have people that are like, anyway,
And it's hard to realize that is city limits because our UGA is unique and a little
Yeah.
windy and or curvy
Right.
or jagged,
right.
or like checkerboarded. And so a lot, because the city of Sequim is very unique with having a very large amount of green field that will be anticipated to be urban levels of development. Now, maybe it takes 100 or 200 years, and that's 8 generations past our time here, or 4 generations past our time here. But it's not easy to expand city limits. And we want to make sure that the growth that we do have in these bite-sized 20-year chunks is appropriate to be compatible with the future growth that comes at year 40, year 60.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
and two of those 3 people who approached me read the article that was in the
Mhm.
paper, and they were like aghast that they didn't know about this. So it's stuff like that kind of gets people's attention.
And if you guys want, we can frame some zoning maps for you to hang in your house if that's something you like to share with your friends.
Can I get a laminated copy that I can put in my locker at work so I can just open my locker and be like, here, this is,
It's
yeah.
it's unique. It typically is a project that people when they realize, oh, this has been planned for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's at the groundbreaking that they realize, oh, I didn't know. Now I want to say something and there will be a public process for that project when it goes through.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got. Does anybody have anything for good of the order? No? Okay. How about in memory of Karen or Commissioner Mahalik not being here tonight? Would anybody like, in her honor, would anybody like to make a motion?
Karen
adjourn?
contacted me and asked me to move to adjourn tonight.
Okay. Can we get a second? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, meeting adjourned at 7:09.